Joined now by a member of the January 6th committee and someone who knows what is going behind closed doors of this investigation. It's Florida Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy. Congresswoman, I appreciate you coming on.
It's great to be with you.
All right, let me start with what's being pushed back at Ms. Hutchinson. There are three. You've basically asked our reporter the same question. So I want to start with that meeting, whatever happened inside the limousine. How many different accounts does the committee have of whatever happened inside the limousine with the president between the Ellipse and the West Wing?
I think you are absolutely right in your opening, is that while the details are being disputed, the broader narrative is not being disputed. So Cassidy provided us with her, what she heard secondhand. And I think she's a credible and courageous witness because she has been very clear about what she witnessed firsthand and how she witnessed it, and then what she heard secondhand. Obviously, what happened in that limousine was something that she heard secondhand, and she was very open about that being something that she heard secondhand. I think what we need to focus on, though, is that the idea that the president wanted to go to the Capitol is corroborated by a lot of different witnesses. You saw in the hearing Ms. McEnany backing up the idea that the president, after his speech, arriving back at the White House, still wanted to go to the Capitol. We have other witnesses who have indicated that his intention was to go to the Capitol. And I think that's the key piece here, married with the piece that he understood that the crowd was armed. He wasn't fearful for his own safety, but he knew they were armed and he wanted to go with them to the Capitol. And I think we need to stay focused on these larger issues. And of course, the committee welcomes the Secret Service coming under oath and speaking with us on their version of this.
Like I said, did you know, what I'm trying to get at is, did you know about some incident inside the limousine before you heard from Ms. Hutchinson? Had you heard about it from Mr. Ornato? Because he's also somebody you've deposed.
Yes, Mr. Ornato did not have as clear of memories from this period of time as I would say Ms. Hutchinson did, if that's a fair assessment there. But we're always happy to have folks who have recalled things to come back and talk to us.
It's an interesting way you did that. Do you get the sense, given what Congresswoman Cheney said at the end of the hearing, do you get the sense that some of the people that have cooperated have put their own sort of limits on what they'll tell you?
I think if you've looked at the hearings that we've held to date and looked at the normal, ordinary Americans, as well as elected officials who have had their lives turned upside down by a mere tweet by the former president, that you have to understand that a lot of these witnesses are being very courageous when they come and speak to us. They also know that under oath, they and recorded that there is going to be a record of it. As you heard in the quote that Ms. Cheney read, the person calling one of our witnesses indicated to them that Trump is reading the transcripts. So I imagine that must weigh in because these are people and they have lives they want to live. They want to move beyond whatever happened on January 6th. I imagine some of them want to do that. And some of them want to be patriots. And I would put Ms. Hutchinson in that category. She understands her obligation and her oath to the Constitution. And that's why she's been so forthcoming.
How much of her testimony were you able to at least corroborate before we heard it? And I mean, is everything she said, sorry about that, is everything she said something you guys at least made some effort to fact check before you elicited that testimony publicly?
I think the broad strokes of what she said is consistent with what we've heard from other witnesses, which is that the president understood that there could be violence, that the president wanted to head down to the Capitol. You know, the particulars of the details that she's able to recall, you have to understand the Oval Office is the White House is a small staff. And so I think a lot of the specific details she provided gave us color on what we already knew was happening.
Any indication that her testimony has inspired some more folks to reach out and say, you know, I've got either additional information I'd like to provide or any new witnesses?
Well, I don't like to get ahead of the committee, but I will just say that we are continuing to develop the various threads of this narrative and to better understand it, because our goal at the end of the day is to provide the American people with all of the facts and then let them make a decision for themselves whether or not this person was morally fit for office, and for them to understand what he was doing in the run-up to and on January 6th.
I know you're very focused on, you're going to be focusing on what President Trump was doing, I believe, in that sort of 36-hour period, particularly the, I guess, is it 187 minutes of his actions during the riot itself. About how much of the 187 minutes did we get a glimpse of in Ms. Hutchinson's testimony?
You got some glimpses of it, but there's more information, and we will continue to unveil that as these hearings move forward. I think it's really important for folks to understand what was happening both on the Capitol as well as in the White House and in the other departments and agencies that were relevant on January 6th. And we're going to try to take you into the room for a lot of those conversations.
The issue of witness tampering, is this something you're going to, this feels like something you almost need the Justice Department's heft, right? There's some things Congress can't necessarily have sole power to investigate or deal with, correct?
As Ms. Cheney said, we as a committee need to have some discussions about how we move forward with this. But what I will say is that the committee takes it very seriously when there are attempts to influence witness testimony under oath in front of a congressional investigation.
Well, I guess I would say is, do you believe this witness tampering has crossed the line into criminal behavior?
I always let the determination of whether or not criminal activity has occurred or whether or not a criminal investigation needs to happen. I leave that up to the Department of Justice. I'm not interested in playing a lawyer or a judge or a jury on cable news.
Right. And finally, Mr. Meadows, are you guys still actively negotiating with him or not?
We really hope that he would come to the committee and share his perspective. And as so many witnesses who have participated in our depositions, it allows us to get the broadest range of perspectives and information as necessary. Those people who choose not to cooperate with the committee, it's not as if they're not a player in this, but they just have somebody else describe their actions and their motivations. And so I think it's in their best interest, as well as in the best interest of the American people, for them to come forward. And I would include Mr. Meadows in that category.
I assume we see Ms. Hutchinson again, considering what she knows about those minutes and those hours in January 6th, or are we not going to hear from her in a public setting again, as far as your committee is concerned?
Well, you have to remember that we have 4 videotaped depositions, and many of our hearings rely not on live witnesses, but on the video of their depositions. So, not to get ahead of the committee on what we're going to be unveiling over the next couple of hearings, but I'm sure she continues to provide a unique perspective on what was happening within the White House.
I got you. I guess I should take that as we may see her again, but not necessarily live. Is that fair?
I think she did a very courageous thing coming live in public and under oath. And she's shared a lot of information with us, and my gratitude to her. And I think, she's done a lot to help further this investigation.
And she has certainly altered the course of her own life. I mean, this is something that is not easy for anybody to live with, and the burden and what will come with this and what's coming with this. Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy, Democrat from Florida, appreciate you coming on, sharing your perspective.
So great to be with you, Chuck.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.